attendant la critique de BioShock Infinite, programmée dans le prochain classé 18+, et pour compléter de façon différente l'interview de Big Gardner, diffusée il y a un mois et demi, nous avons saisi l'opportunité de parler à Ken Levine. En déplacement sur Paris, le créateur de la licence BioShock et cofondateur du studio Irrational est un personnage important de la scène vidéoludique, un directeur créatif investi dans son métier, ayant une vision bien personnelle du jeu vidéo. Pourtant, rien ne le prédestinait à bosser dans le jeu, ce dernier ayant commencé à écrire des scripts pour le cinéma.
I started working in the video game industry when I was about 29 when I got my first job at a company called Looking Glass. And honestly, I answered an ad in a magazine, and they flew me up there, and a week later they hired me. It happened very quickly. I didn't even realize until I applied for that job that people actually made video games. I just thought they kind of showed up, you know, on your computer. So I was thrilled to get that job, and always be grateful that they hired me.
Et le pire, c'est qu'il n'a même pas eu à gravir les échelons au sein du mythique studio Looking Glass, qui a formé de futurs grands noms du jeu vidéo, tels que Harvey Smith, Doug Church ou encore Warren Spector. Ken Levine a en effet été propulsé directement au poste de game designer, sans aucune expérience préalable dans le jeu vidéo.
My second week, I was put in a room with this guy Doug Church, who was the lead on System Shock 1 and Ultima Underworld. And okay, go design a game, and that game became Thief. And I'm not sure why they take their best guy and put him in a room with me, but I completely lucked out. I don't know if anybody else in the industry lucked out to the level I lucked out.
Un coup de chance pour lui et pour tous les fans de Thief, System Shock 2 et BioShock. On s'est également intéressé à la jeunesse de BioShock Infinite pour savoir quel avait été réellement le point de départ du jeu.
Well, BioShock Infinite, we started with a setting, which was a time period and a setting. So the city in the sky and the time period. And that's all we had at the beginning. And we just kept building on that. And it goes a little bit back and forth. It's like you come up with an idea for a narrative thing, and then that spawns a gameplay idea, that spawns more narrative ideas, and it just sort of keeps going back and forth. We don't sit down and write a design document at the very beginning and that solves every problem. We're a bit more organic in the process than that.
Alors évidemment, on se dit que la création de Columbia, la cité suspendue dans les airs, a dû se faire en réaction au premier BioShock qui se situait dans une cité sous-marine, soit un environnement confiné.
No, we didn't choose City in the Sky as a reaction. We knew we wanted a different place, but when we started looking at the time period around 1900 or so, there's so much artwork, like science fiction, early science fiction artwork that showed cities, these sort of really sort of utopian sky cities. And we just were immediately drawn to that.
Une cité qui non seulement est un personnage à part entière du jeu, mais a également joué le rôle de game designer improvisé.
When you built a city, when you decided to build a city in the sky, that implied a bunch of things to us. Like for instance, we really wanted to play with the verticality of the space and the distances. We realized that we wanted some sort of vertical form of movement. And we sort of kicked around jetpacks and hang gliders and stuff, and nothing really satisfied. And then I always loved roller coasters, and especially those old wooden ones. And I said, well, what if there was some kind of rail system that was elevated in the sky, and you could fight on them? And people were like, yeah, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard in my life. And then I sort of kept at it and kept at it and kept at it. And eventually somebody in the team prototyped it, and people saw it had some potential, and that became the Skylines. But it was dictated by the geometry of the city.
BioShock Infinite aborde des thématiques très matures, telles que le racisme, la violence, la religion, les dérives politiques, et pour Ken Levine, leur présence dans le jeu est naturelle, sans pour autant avoir été préméditée.
I think it's important that game designers pursue the things they're interested in. I don't want to tell another game designer what kind of game to make. I think that's a recipe for disaster. I think that you want people to be driven by their passions, and the kind of things you see in BioShock Infinite are just reflective of the passions of the people at Irrational. So if you grab some guy who's making, some great fighting game, and you said, make a game about, Zen Buddhism, he'd be like, I don't want to make a game about Zen Buddhism. Well, you have to make a game about Zen Buddhism. I don't think that would work well. I think that people are driven by their interests, and we don't start out by saying, we're gonna make a game about social themes and this and that. It's just the things that interest us and drive us and things we get excited by. And some people are excited by, sports cards, and some people are excited by sociology, I'm a bit more egg-headed, I tend to like things that are, about politics and art and science and things like that.
Mais ce qui surprend le plus avec BioShock premier du nom et BioShock Infinite, c'est que malgré leur thématique adulte, la qualité et l'originalité des mondes qu'ils proposent d'explorer, ils n'en appartiennent pas moins à l'un des genres les plus populaires du jeu vidéo, le FPS.
Does it always have to be a shooter when you make these games? And it's interesting because I think there are three parts of, there's FPS, right? And, sometimes the S is at odds with the FP, the story, that's just having a first-person experience. You don't necessarily need to have combat in a first-person game. Games generally have some kind of skill component. They generally have some kind of challenge component, whether it's a puzzle or whether it's, hand-eye coordination or shooting, whatever. And that's what makes a game to some degree. But then you see guys like guys who do The Walking Dead, which is very, very well done. Their focus was not on making a game; it was on telling a story. I like games personally. I like playing games that have gameplay. It's a tough question for me because it does provide a lot of challenges when you're trying to tell the story. But I think part of the reason the game works is because it is that tension and that integration of the two that makes it sort of fly. But I'm not saying forever I would make it, shooters. It's really the FP part that really drew me.
Nous, ce qui nous intéresse, c'est que Ken Levine et Irrational Games continuent de créer des univers, sans oublier d'y mettre la dose de gameplay qui sied le mieux à notre média. Mais en attendant la critique de BioShock Infinite, on ne peut que s'interroger sur le futur de Irrational Games et ce que le studio sera à même de proposer sur les PS4, Xbox 720 et autres Wii U.